Here we go.
Um,
What's going on?
Not much.
Madeleine, you're in before me. What the fuck?
What's
Dale
up?
and Madeleine, mate. This is a treat.
How are
Really
you?
good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Good.
That's
I was
awesome. You know,
yeah, I'm
Dale, this is
surprised.
about the fifth time that I think you've been on this podcast in the last couple of years. Did you know that?
Is that
Yeah, I reckon you're the most featured guest that I've ever had, I would say.
I feel honored to join this time then.
You're doing well, Madeline. I don't know much about you, so I'm keen to find out more about you. But, what I do know is that you get hypersensitive to raw milk, and it seems to induce some sort of I don't know, hyperactive activity or something like that that's going on. So that's interesting about you, which we should explore that a little bit.
is that what you've come to?
There is so many people because we went to the Living Free festival 2 weekends ago that the movement put on, and so
Mm.
many people were mentioning the raw milk thing, and I'm like, I'm starting to get a bit of a reputation
It's
around
it's
all
a thing. Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I drink raw milk. It doesn't do that to me. I need to find out what else you're doing to
that. Are you getting it
increase your
straight?
energy.
Are you getting it straight from the cow? Are you getting it from like
Oh,
someone that literally is hand milking a cow?
no, no, of course not.
That's what you need. Is it Cleopatra? Is that what you're getting?
The mother's milk or whatever it is. Yeah,
Oh yeah, because there's people like, oh, I'm going to go get Cleopatra, which is a raw milk that
sure.
I think you can get on the East Coast. I'm like, nah, it doesn't do the same thing. Then
Really?
straight from the tip. Yeah, you
Oh,
got to
okay.
find someone that is hand milking a cow. It's like the love's infused.
Yeah, right. The first time I tried that, I was in the villages of Macedonia about 6 years ago, and that's pretty much how you got all your milk and bits and pieces like that was off the farm and in the garden, all that kind of stuff. So that was my first introduction to it all.
It's awesome.
Really?
What an
Yeah, it
awesome.
was really good. What you guys been up to? How was the festival? You guys are going all right. I've noticed a few things coming up with your talks and things like that and courses. You're really starting to make some headway with a lot of your coaching and teaching and philosophies and stuff like that. It's really good to see.
Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
good. I got up late.
Say that
Yeah,
again.
well, yeah, it went quite well. Just like Madeline ended up turning up late for our own talk, but that's why I said, oh, it's good you're here on time, Matt. But no, it was actually it was really, really good. I had a blast there.
That's
It was
awesome.
really, really well put on actually. And it
It
was a
was
good spot.
I was really impressed. Like it was a really good festival. Like I would recommend even there were people that were just down the road, never heard of the Living Free movement before, and they come and they were like, "This is amazing. This is so good." And I was speaking about Mercury retrograde because it was Mercury retrograde at the time, and I was blaming that for being late.
Mhm.
Anyway, the guy was like, "Oh, I heard your speech. It was really good. What Mercury line is going on at the moment?" Like this guy just from down the road, but he was just like loving it. It was so
Wow.
good. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
so good.
Isn't Mercury always in fucking retrograde? Like when is
Yeah,
it out of
it's about
retrograde?
It was
if you do like post and pre-shadow, it's basically half the year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not like
Dale,
some regular.
like I take a fascination to like astrotheology and all those sorts of things. I love anything to do with star signs, numbers, all the meanings behind names and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I have a resistance towards it because it just sounds, especially nowadays, there's a lot of wording and terminology around it, and it just sounds like not to disrespect anyone, but particularly when you get into this kind of uh, new age spiritual teaching around uh, polarity and the masculine, the feminine, and divine masculine. It fucking loses me. I get a bit turned off by the wording. It just starts to sound so wishy-washy, and I'm like, what the fuck is this person talking about? That I don't understand. I can't even understand what the sentences mean because they're all like, when you're holding space and you're in a divine feminine and the masculine comes through and
I don't think they know either though. That's
oh
the
my God.
thing.
But Adrian, these are all their catchphrases, and they're used in.
Yeah, it's like language, that's how people find their kind of sense of belonging is through language. And it's like you can literally see it in different spaces. They all use the same language, the same jargon.
Yeah,
It's really
right. I often feel stupid because I don't get it. I'm just like, can you just can you just break it down so like a layperson like myself can fucking understand what you're saying? Like just say what you really want to say without using the words. But anyway, that's my
Yeah.
take on it.
Do you know what?
I
It's like
don't know what's going on in those spaces at the moment.
it's like a thing, in like in academia, like I used to get this all the time when we're doing like teaching methods at uni, and I'm like, what are you fucking talking about? And then they actually put it into practice, and I'm like, oh, you just mean that. Like, why did you have to use all this academic speak to like just explain the most simplest thing to
Exactly.
like basically, like they'd have all these terms for like asking a child a question and then asking another, and it's like, why couldn't you just... But yeah,
Just go straight to the point.
it goes
Like
everywhere.
don't flop around. You could, and that really summarizes like all of schooling in my opinion. I mean, I reckon you could probably like piss off half the year really and just get all your academic learning already done. The rest of it would just be playtime. Like it wouldn't be much else to do. They have to have this sort of filler stuff in order to make it sound more important than what it actually is.
But I think it's the hierarchical of the teacher and the student too. Like, have you ever been in a workplace where it's like first day on the job and they're like, grab me the TRC and the QR, and you're like, well, mate, I'm just starting. They fly acronyms around. Like, don't
Yeah,
give me
yeah.
an acronym until you tell me what it means. And that, no, I used to hate that. And then you're sitting there nodding. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, but it's like, all right, yeah, I'm the superior. I've been here a few years.
Hmm. I'm listening to a book at the moment. It's called Weapons of Mass Instruction. Have you ever read it?
Oh, I've heard of that.
No, I've
I
never
haven't
read it.
read it yet though.
Yeah, I'm only a little ways into it, but it's basically if you're on Spotify and you get like the premium service and stuff like that, it's included in the audiobook section.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, it's excellent. Like I've only a couple of chapters in, and it's really good. But it basically just summarizes the education system to a T in the first chapter, really, and then it kind of like works through how you can work around the indoctrination of the schooling system, and then educate your kids in a way that they can be free thinkers and think for themselves and all that kind of stuff.
That's
the
awesome.
weapons of mass instruction. I think I saw like a trailer for it or something.
Yeah, I
That's
don't think the
cool.
author's around anymore. I think he died a couple of years ago. But was a teacher and then sort of come out with a whole bunch of literature and books and bits and pieces around it. But that's one of the ones that I've come to know that he's most famous for. So yeah, it's worth diving into. You guys, I think, would love it.
I'll definitely look at that. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Um,
Are we
when we were
recording?
talking about before about this sort of new age talk and all that kind of stuff, it's been very interesting to sort of explore a lot of the last 4 years. I don't know, because Madeline, I understand from your perspective, like you talk about uh, ancient cultures, particularly indigenous cultures and things like that, and how to use natural law in terms of embodying it the way you live, and you're way into numerology and all that kind of stuff. But when I hear you speak, I don't hear you speak in certain new age languages. I think that's kind of like all that phrasing and talking, but I think more to the point that I wanted to get your view on was that, 4 years ago when the pandemic hit, there was this like massive division amongst, who thought it was real and who thought it was a bunch of bullshit, right? And then over the years, though, there seems to be like an increasing like subdivisions of
Yeah.
different people. So, I'm getting pushback these days. Like 4 years ago, it was like, you're an idiot and this is real and you shouldn't be like putting misinformation out there because you're going to kill your grandmother and all that kind of stuff. But now I get things to do with like, I thought you were awake. If you were really awake, then you wouldn't be looking at American politics, or you wouldn't be buying into this dirty, evil money and all this kind of stuff. You would just be more of a free sovereign thinker. So now it's like, fuck, I thought there was a divide back then, but now it's a division of who's awake and who's really, really awake. It's kind of like I know I have to prove myself as to like how much of
Yeah.
information that I really know. I just want to get your thoughts on it. I don't know if you're experiencing the same thing, but it seems like there's
So,
even in this truther movement, which I fucking hate that word, is like there's still more division amongst even like the people that are supposed to be free thinkers.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about the pendulum swing when we chatted at the Living Free Festival recently, and I think that's a big thing that obviously is coming from. I mean, there's many layers of it, but if you really look at in terms of like trauma that's been locked through time with people and how they are using their left and right hemisphere of their brain and how they're kind of taking in information. I think we're seeing a lot of grasping to certain things that they can sort of understand or I guess apply to their life, or they have like there's some kind of resonance with it in some way, shape, or form, and they'll cling to that. And I think when we saw the swing, especially from like New Age to Christianity or New Age to just totally like we're kind of seeing all these different swings take place. I think there's a grasping to certain ways of looking at things and ideologies because people are not able to kind of maybe hold two poles and just observe and be curious and ask questions. And when we look at things that may be like, okay, that doesn't seem right, or it doesn't seem accurate, or whatever it might be, it's kind of instead of asking the question and being in that space of uncertainty, I think because of the fact that we are in a psychological war, essentially, and people are running off fear, which really is, we're activating the reptilian mind there. They're kind of wanting to grasp to certainty. So in the moment of uncertainty, not being able to hold two poles, so to speak, it's like, what pole can I grasp to that I can feel certain with, and then find my crowd, find my tribe with that. I think that's what's happening. And then it's happening on all levels. Like you said, in the truth movement, there's all these different pockets. Like, what's the virus? Like, what's this? What's actually happening on this level? And people are grasping. And I really do think it's coming from fear, to be honest, more than
It has to
anything.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is also attached to that is back in the day, it's interesting to say back in the day. So like, yesterday, basically, when this whole fucking pandemic was going down, I did the same thing. I was looking to people for a source of information that was different from the narrative, right? So you would gravitate towards certain people that would basically, they would strike a chord with you. You feel like there's a sense of like, this person gets what's going on. And a lot of people would do that. So the doctors that sort of spoke out, the Malones, the McCullers, and the Pierre Corys of the world and all the rest of it, were like, people were flocking to them to say, oh, okay, this person gets it. They're a doctor. This is their credentials. And we should go in the direction of what they say because they have credibility. But then you cast your mind like 4 years forward now, and now they're, what's it called? Like, disinformation specialists. They're working for the opposition. They're a black hat or some shit like that. Like, it's like now everyone that was the truth 4 years ago is not anymore. They're working for the opposition, and they're what's the word, Dale, that they
I think we spoke about projecting up and projecting
Yeah,
down.
like it's co-intel agent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shill.
What's it called? They're a shill. Yeah, that's right. They're a shill, or they're a something like that. And I'm like, fuck. Like, there's no one that I can talk to that hasn't got nowadays another cast of dispersion, that there's something sinister about that person, and they're an agent for the other side. It doesn't matter who I talk about, whether it's a Rogan or a Russell Brand or a like JFK. Sorry, not JFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It doesn't matter who it is. I interviewed David Icke the other week, and someone come on and said, this guy is a Satanist. He works for the other side. I've seen him kill babies and all this kind of stuff. I'm just like, man, who can you fucking trust if that's the level of discernment that people have when it comes to seeking truth? I don't think people even know who they really are. Like, this version of their own identity is that skewed that they don't even know which way to turn.
You want to speak into this?
Oh yeah, I mean, we could talk heaps about.
Yeah.
See, there's a lot of stuff we talk about in Skydive too, like with our weekly chats. So I think what's happening is especially you see a lot of people that have awoken to new information in the last 4 year in that 4 year period. So what Madeline mentioned there about like projections. So like these people that are extremely untrusting, which is a level of projection down on certain people, were the same people that were um, massively trusting of government 4 years ago. So it shows you, and this is what Anarchy Lucas taught us when she showed us her what's called unconditional model, is the level that someone will project up will they will project down, and so you can see that in that swing. Yeah, it's I mentioned to Madeline before, like I shared this one Sasha Stone post about a year ago. I think we mentioned it in a podcast. And like I don't really listen to the guy. Just like this clip came up, and I'm like, yeah, he's bang on here. Like he was just talking about artificial intelligence. So I did like a disclaimer on the post, and I'm like, I know like people will, because people just there's certain people that people will lose it about, and he's one of them. You'll get a real polarizing view on
Mm.
that guy, and I think some of it's validated, but it didn't matter because we always talk about like truth for truth's sake and not identifying with the personality that's speaking. Like you just mentioned David Icke before. Now, none of us know this guy personally, but he's got a track record that backs up, and the stuff I've looked at of his, it holds validity over time. So if he is a shill, then it will come out to be so. But that doesn't even discredit some of the stuff he said. You have to then pick apart what you believe to be true, and it takes the power back to the individual. But yeah, in this Sasha Stone post, I'm like, please do not comment on like this guy's a shill. Like, just listen to this information.
You need disclaimers.
This is
Yeah.
quite interesting. And then I had like 20 comments under, he's a fucking shill. This guy, and it's, you see it all the time. But I'd imagine a lot of those people wouldn't even have watched the video. But I think it's an example of the unbalanced psyche that we always talk about too. Because yeah, you're seeing because when Anarchy spoke about projecting up, they're traits that you usually admire in others that you don't have. Like I always looked up to courageous people, and I've realized that I was actually quite a I was quite a coward for a lot of my life and a lot of things. So
Hmm.
I always admired that courage, and I think that a lot of people now is they're over what they're seeing as discernment is like this crazy imbalance of discernment because they were so trusting of everything before without question. I think
Yeah.
that's what's yeah.
Yeah. So how do you, so there's a quote, it kind of goes something like there's the truth and then there's the truth. So like there's always two versions of it. And I think what a lot of information that I guess persuades people to either go one way or the other is that there might be someone like an Ike or someone who you don't like their ways or the maybe the character that they are, but they do say an element of truth in what they how they go about things or maybe like a particular topic. So how do you then discern for yourself what's the truth and what's the truth? Like what are they saying and what is the actual truth? Is that something that you can you walk you through like a particular process or an evolution from how you thought, I don't know, maybe last year or 5 years ago, or like you said before, like, a lot of my life has been conducive to a certain way of doing or thinking or being. And now all of a sudden I realize that this projecting up or projecting down is a part of the mirror that was afraid to, confront maybe in a certain way.
Well, do you want to mention this, Mads? But we speak a lot about like we have recently about like humility too, and it's even Max Egan that we had on. He said like people are too scared to be wrong. It's like what's wrong with being wrong? And I mean, Maddie could speak, but she's a former feminist when when she was younger, and like in Sky Earth again that we run, we make it very, very clear before we even start that we don't even want people coming in that have finite or dogmatic belief systems. And basically all the dogmatic belief system is that you can't be wrong on a certain thing that you're dogmatic about. You'll never shift from that. So it's just being open to all possibility. Do you want to add more to that, Matt? You probably...
Yeah, well,
Because I've actually, we've been listening to Candace Owens quite a lot lately, haven't we?
Do you want to add more? Do you want to add more to that, Mads, and then jumps in?
I just sort of want... Anyway,
no, this is our whole podcast. Hey.
Oh yeah, no, we're being very good now. We're being very good. We're actually starting
to we're getting better.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, it's a good example though, the Sky to Earth conference, because we have so many different guests. So obviously Dale brings on people he's connected to. I bring people I'm connected to or have, listened to and reached out to. And so through the 9 weeks, we listen to everything from, tribal Dreamtime stories to, we've had David Whitehead on, we've had, Annika Lucas, we've had people that have kind of been through the most horrific experiences, child sex trafficking and things like that. And then we have people speaking about, we've got Will Keller coming on, speaking about natural law principles. So we have like such a varying range of people. Had Clint Richardson, he was like deconstructing the Bible. That's a whole topic as well, because he kind of looks at things, completely differently as well. And so when you're in that space, it's kind of like we're not kind of setting things up going, this is what we believe in, and now these are all the speakers to confirm it. We're literally in a space of inquiry and asking questions and getting all of these different perspectives. And I guess through my own experience, because I guess your question is, how do we discern, like, what is that process of discernment? And I think for me, it's actually been a reflection of my own balance within myself, really, because when you come across all of these different people's perspectives and stories, and I guess the amount of information and stories you hear obviously helps, because if you hear from one person, actually a good example was I was randomly talking to this man when I was camping the other week, and we were speaking about all the issues that are currently going on, how they're talking about climate change and they're talking about renewable energy and they're talking about all these different things. And I said, oh, sometimes I wonder we should just, cut electricity. And he goes, well, when I was in UK and we were, we didn't have electricity, like everyone was burning like fires and coal, and it was a massive like smog issue, and no one, people couldn't breathe like fresh air, and everyone was having lung issues and things like that. You can see like just in that conversation, I'm now like, oh, I've learnt something new, and it's kind of giving me a different perspective, that it's not like, okay, there's all these problems that electricity seems to be the issue with. Let's cut electricity, which is a pendulum swing, right? And it's kind of like when we have the diversity of stories, especially from the older generation, we should be probably talking more to the older generation about different things that have happened. When we've got that, we can have kind of a wider view and we can find that middle ground more. But I think as well, when we are balanced within ourselves, we can receive that information. See, probably 10, 20 years ago, far out, I'm feeling old when I say that. But like if I heard that and I'd already made my decision, this is the problem, we need to go the other way, and someone said to me something else, I would either not take it in, or there'd be some kind of like rebuttal around it. Do you know what I mean? But I think because there's a level of balance within myself now, and I guess it's self-love too, really, which sounds really corny, but it's kind of like I can accept everyone's flaws. Like Dale annoys the hell out of me sometimes, and I know I annoy him, but I can accept all of him because I've accepted all of me, So it's kind of the same as when you're taking in lots of information. You're like, okay, these people are on a journey. They're discovering different things. Maybe they haven't done the best things in their life. Maybe there is, maybe there's some evil going on. Who knows? I'm just going to accept where they're at, the information there, and I'm not going to go one way or the other. I'm just going to receive it. What is it? What can I take from it? And then move from there. So I think it's a combination of diversity of stories and balance within oneself. Because as soon as you've got that, you're not going to grasp onto things like it's the end of the world. Like you need that to be true because X, Y, Z, whatever it might be. That's personally what I think kind of has been my journey with
I
discernment.
think you do it anyway, Adrian. Like
Yeah.
you're got enough humility that you don't know it all, and you're clearly on the path of like seeking and speaking to people, which like it's pretty similar to us too. But you can't ever claim that you know it all. And that's why
Mm.
we always harp on about dogmatism, because it's almost like it's like giving up in a sense, out of fear, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I
Accepting a
think
certain.
my own personal experience is that there are certain things which I did have a level of dogmatism like towards, and I was unchangeable with my thought process. But then there are certain catalysts in life that kind of just change your viewpoint of the world. You know, your paradigm shifts so dramatically that you have no option but to think in another way. As I've sort of evolved, and especially in the last, say, half a dozen years, particularly in my coaching career and the way I kind of come from a business background and more into personal development and mindset and all those sorts of things, and especially emotional work. I think I like what you said about Madeleine, your relationship, your self love, like everything to do with relationships for me has been like a critical turning point. So with the tumultuous 4 years of, you know, economically, like losing businesses and then the division and putting my head on the chopping block, but then also, like you said, Dale, seeking information to go, well, fuck it, I really don't know anything. You know, I'm only guessing to a large degree. So let's get some more information that I can gravitate towards, or at least pull from that experience and just see whether that resonates. A strategy for me is really to kind of like have a moment of sit back and watch rather than retaliate and respond immediately. You know, like that there's a gap between stimulus and response, and that gap is like really, really small, but it's highly significant, because if you don't pay attention to the gap, you know, it's the sort of space between the notes. And then, so for me to sit back and do two things: if I'm listening to Dale or Madeleine, I'd like to kind of really take a long-term approach to see whether you are actually embodying what you talk about. So if I can see that there's incongruency between what you say and what you do, then that's the signal for me. That's the red flag. If there's a pure embodiment of it all, and I think humility, Dale, is a huge part, with all of that, then to me, I go, you know what, this person gets it, and I'm happy to proceed. It's not so much with caution, but I'm happy to keep going. And then the other piece of the puzzle is, how does that feel or apply to my life? Like ever since I started this podcast, I'd talk to people about whatever is going on. Then I go, right, yeah, so what do we do? Like, what do we do with that information? How do I apply it to life? Like, where's the solution to this issue? And I'm surprised with most people, like it's not a real well thought out plan. Most people are kind of just making it up as they go along. No one really has like a definitive plan and this is the way to go. So that whole sort of test and measure hypothesis is I mean, that's kind of like how I live through my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like becoming the observer. Yeah.
Yeah, but then, like you said, Dale, like you do have to surrender to the fact that when you think you know it all, you know nothing, right? And so you just, and things can change on a dime. And there's certain ways that I look at my life, relationships, food. You know, like if you had even 5, 6 years ago, if you had said, Adrian, you will be eating grass-fed whatever and avoiding seed oils, and you'd be, you know, purifying water and doing all of these things to get away from certain toxicities, and you'd be watching the skies all the time because you think you can see that there's fucking spraying this shit in the sky. I just would have laughed. I thought, like, as open-minded as I thought I was back then, I just would have thought you're a fucking
Yeah,
idiot.
yeah. But do you know what it shows you? Like when you have hindsight and you look back, it because if you're looking for the solution, it shows you're already in the process of the solution anyway. Do you know what I mean? Because you can see a period of change over 4 years. It's just that I guess people, like we were having this conversation on the phone the other day, you or me. It's like, um, because David Icke always gives his solution. It's very broad, and then you're like, well, fucking like, where's the nuts and bolts and how are we actually going to do that? But
That's
I
right.
think you mentioning like how much you've changed, and we've spoken about this too, Maddie. Like I even just looking at my Facebook post 4 years ago, I cringe. And I was a fully grown adult writing that stuff, but it was a different time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it shows the process of the solution too. But I think like because you mentioned all like authenticity too is what we spoke about the other night. And I did a whole video on this after like it was kind of weird. This guy came up to me at an event in Melbourne. He goes, Dale, do you know authenticity is the highest frequency? I'm like, bullshit. I didn't know that. And then so I started looking up. And I'm like, yeah, it actually is. So like more than love, authenticity is a higher frequency. And I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense because me and Madeline spoke about this too, how I think everything in this reality that's wrong is like people not being themselves and mimicking. Like I don't know if you saw like Kamala Harris the other night. She's like mimicking like a Southern accent, and
Doing the
it's
accent. Yeah, I saw
yeah,
that.
but it's I mean you see this behavior everywhere, and it's because no one. Yeah, I mean you see it in the corporate world. It's horrible where people go in and they're expressing or playing out a role that isn't truly them, and it's so inauthentic. And I've always hated that, and I can kind of see through those people.
Mm.
So all the expression of authenticity is basically backing up with actions what you actually say. That's all it is, really. And you can tell when someone says something they don't mean it, and all you're doing is picking up on inauthenticity, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this as I'm like an authentic person. I mean, like there's times I am, and I think like sometimes when I speak like that in a video that resonates, but like that is not who I am all my life. I have been at all. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not saying that as if I'm doing it, but um, yeah, I think that it's a key thing, and it's also a solution too. Because if everyone's been a unique individual, it's a different
Mm.
world.
But I think, like, to a point that Madeline was saying before, like the when you mention self love and as corny as and esoteric as it sounds, I think when you have self love, you have self respect. When you have self respect, you become self aware, and when you have self awareness, that's when you're at the the closest point to truly understanding what authenticity is, because you've peeled back as many layers as possible in order to feel like this is the rawest sense of who you are. And when you embrace that, then you quickly realize that there's some really sort of dark parts of yourself that need to be embraced and honored and accepted, because there's a part of ourselves that we often don't like, and we kind of resent the fact that we are the way we are, and if you're not self-aware, you feel like there's nothing that is within your control to do anything about it. The more you go, it's like that book, The Obstacle is the Way. Like the more you go through the problem, the more you see that you can dance between the light and the dark. And that's kind of I guess a growth point for me in terms of a realization is to realize like there's certain parts of me that are really sinister and dark. And I was talking the other day to a coach. His name's Tiziano Squerzo. Have you ever heard of him? You should have him on your podcast. He's fucking great.
Yeah, where's he from? I think I saw.
Well, he's from Sydney, but he's originally from Italy, right? So he's got the most beautiful Italian accent. It's sexy as fuck,
I
right?
know who you're talking about. I know.
Yeah. So, but he goes about, like your morphogenetic imprinting from your parents and your lineage and all that kind of stuff. So it's really, really good. But I was talking to him about, because in relationship, the most common thing that gets thrown around is like narcissistic traits and all that kind of stuff. But then when you really think about your own personality trait, I don't know if it's true for you guys, but for me, like I've been all of the worst traits, right? I've been the egotistical, chauvinistic, self-centered, narcissistic pig. Like I've been all of that. And so when you learn that there are parts of you, and when people push my buttons, I can quickly switch. Like it's like there is a dark side of me that people will be disgusted by. And all I can really say is that the more I embody all of those things that I just mentioned before, the more authentic I become. And in that process, the more humble you are, because you realize you're just a human being and you're trying to figure it out just like everyone else. And then there's no pedestaling and soapboxing and all of the stuff. I just go, I'm here. I'm a book. I'm an open book to learn. I'm a student of life, and that's going to be my philosophy, no matter what level of information or knowledge I acquire.
Well, psychologically, that's like bringing the unconscious conscious, which means that you're not just running on autopilot. You can actually observe when it's coming forward, which is like I see that as kind of like the solution for all things. If you're aware of the cycles that you've got coming up, like how you think, how you feel is how you act. When that comes up and you're actually aware of it, that's when you actually are the one that is able to, like you said, in that moment, be the observer and make a new decision, or just observe that that's actually that's actually something that, one of the patterns that you play out. I think the problem is when we suppress it and oppress it over time, that's when it becomes that, when we're not even looking at it. But I went through a similar journey too, like recently, like in the last 3 years, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, I started to understand this Dreamtime story I've given about the Seven Sisters, and I'm sure you've like heard of it. A lot of people maybe don't realize that there's an undercurrent story about the psychology, like the feminine psyche, and it was so eye-opening for me because we were kind of dealing with some stuff with my husband's ex and how I was responding to that, and we're kind of in this kind of back and forth. And it was so interesting because at the time I was learning this story, and then I was kind of diving in deeper into kind of breaking it down in terms of like understanding the psychology behind it. And it was so eye-opening for me that I remember it was like a psych shattering moment, and it really opened up my awareness of, I guess, this kind of like deep biological fear that I guess has been passed down from generation to generation within women, and a jealousy that we have for the masculine because they are stronger, more capable, in a physical sense, and how we then respond to that, in terms of like power struggles. And it's actually quite deep, like in the sense of how it kind of plays out. Like it is quite a embedded thing within the feminine. And really in human beings, like we are essentially an inferior race. We do need community to survive. If we were just put in the bush, like, we do need community. So there's that element within us anyway. But kind of going through that journey was so eye-opening. And essentially it kind of like, it really, I'd already kind of been aware of, because like Dale said, I was a feminist. But that was a while ago before I kind of realized the agenda at play. So I kind of was already aware of that side of things, but then this is a whole new layer of it. And bringing up all of that stuff within me, like control when I'm fearful, the lack of trust, all of these things and how they kind of play out was so healing for me. And then I started to see that on a massive scale, like in terms of like where we are now with technology and AI and all of this. And when I came to this awareness, that's when I came across Michael Dzarian's work. I don't know whether you've dived into that with The Terrible Mother, The Dragon Mother, and the psychology of the. So
you gotta listen to that one. That's epic.
I kind of like just synchronistically, I don't even know what I was like maybe looking at YouTube or something, because I'd had all these kind of like epiphanies around, I guess, the power of the woman, but also the power of the woman to deeply harm the masculine, and then that kind of how that kind of plays out internally and then externally. And I was having all these like epiphanies, and I was typing things in, and I ended up coming across, I'd actually heard of Michael Dzarian, but I looked at more of his older stuff, I think, and not really or maybe I just wasn't ready for it. And I came across his, Dragon Mother stuff, which is around the feminine psyche. And I'm like, this is a core wound that's literally being passed down from generation to generation, is like almost like the core issue that we're seeing kind of play out collectively. The reason why we have government, like there's so many reasons for it. And it was all literally from me kind of unpacking this Dreamtime story and then looking at, literally seeing it within myself. I was like, wow, this is like, this is another level. And now that awareness within myself, I can now see it play out with other people, other women, and then what's happening, worldwide. And I don't know, it's very freeing actually to be able to kind of be in that space of observing it because you're no
Mm.
longer controlling.
If you see like what you were saying, Adrian, was like all those negative traits that you had, because if they're in if they're in you, they've got to be out there, right? And vice versa. But like with the Dragon Mother story, it's great because it's built on it was built on like jealousy as well too. And the same as like AI now, because AI is all mimicking. So it's like mimicking and replicating, which is like, I think is a jealousy as well too. But like in that interview, the one that was on the Here for the Truth one, that was it was so good. And they talk about immaculate conception, like the origin story of immaculate conception. Um,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it predates the Bible, all those immaculate conception stories, and it was like the women they'd formed into a cult because of an imbalance between the women and the men, and that they were saying that the children were coming from the god, they were the children of the gods, so the men had no knowledge of conception and sex.
And even
And
in
Yeah, right.
and he said
Bible
that
time,
this is like this jealousy like carried on for a long time, like thousands of years, and it was all rooted in this hiding the knowledge of fertility from the men.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot deeper than what I've come to know. I really like the sort of decoding of the Bible and the stories and all that kind of stuff. It's something that I've wrestled with I've grown up as a Christian. I went to Catholic schools, Catholic primary school and Catholic high school. And I'm not sure if you know, Dale. I
Mm.
think I told you this in the first time that we had a conversation. I went to Edmund Rice College in Wollongong, and Brother Evans in 1992 or whatever got busted for
Yeah, you did tell me that, your
getting with
principal,
kids,
yeah.
right? And he flew up to Queensland and committed suicide, and we were all like locked in our classrooms for that day, and no one knew what was going on. And then sort of as the day unfolded, we got all that information out. And then they used to have this home at the front of the school. It was called Eddie's House. And Eddie's House was a school, a home for boys with broken families, right? And so then it all started to tie in together that there was this whole kind of pedophilia going on within the brothers, the Christian college.
Yeah.
So, but we've had the Lord Mayor Frank Garkel. He got absolutely butchered to death by one of his victims here in Wollongong. So there's a big sort of satanic hub here that's been going on for a while. But the reason why I mentioned that in terms of the religion side of things was that there's my kind of like trying to decode the Bible or decipher what the true story is because most of the religion that I've been exposed to from a child up to say 12 or 13 was, the wrath of God and all of the stories. But then from 13 to say 16, it's pretty much satanic after that. It kind of goes, the pendulum really swings to something that's rooted in evil. And so, yeah, I've got a deep curiosity for decoding what the stories are and what they mean and how they relate to because there's a lot of truth in it, right? So again, it's like this discernment between what's real and what's the truth, and there's a lot of truth to it all, but I have a very big disconnect with the validity of the origins of the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, the literalists. I mean, we talk about this a lot too. Like Madeleine mentioned, we've had Clint Richardson on, and he speaks about the whole Bible as a book of law. But I mean, like again, we've mentioned before, like the Bible, you can read it because people get dogmatic on what it is, right? So you have the Bible literalists. The Earth is 6,000 years old. You can trace everyone's bloodline back. Then you have like the people that read it as a book of numerology, people that read it as a book of astrotheology, people that read it as a book of prophecy, like,
Yeah.
and then just reading it as an allegory. And I like to bring everything. I like to bring it all back to the hero's journey. It's just simple, and the Jesus story fits to a T from like his baptism to his death.
Mm.
So I don't know. You could go on forever, but like I'm fascinated in the prophecy. When I first started getting into this stuff, it was like prophecy that first intrigued me, and now
Same.
to like now was it really for you too?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was my
Because
thing.
when you think about the prophecy is the most the most fascinating part to me, and the most interesting to try and decipher what is. It's like I was talking to David Icke the other day about, what is this holographic universe or a program versus that's something that is being created from, by a higher power. So we circle back to this: who is the creator, and is this a program? Is this something that we're just playing out? But the prophecy is really key because it really depicts a lot of future events, and then my mind goes to the timeline being sort of non-linear, and like you and I, we're and Madeleine, we're having this conversation, but this is a moment in time that is synchronized by a level of vibration that we are now kind of like meeting each other at, whereas 6 months ago, a year ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we never were in alignment, and now we are. So I feel like, with that being said, if you can kind of buy into the fact that perhaps there's a moment in time that is being repeated, then there's a lot of history, there's a lot of civilizations that are more advanced, there's more structures and buildings. If you've ever traveled Europe and areas around there, you can't fathom how these buildings were ever constructed with the primitive tools and systems that they had. So in my eyes, there would have to be a cycle of evolution that has been created and lived, and then left a story behind, some snippet of a story to say this is the way things once were, and then the new evolution or new cycle of humanoid comes through and then relives a timeline again.
Yeah, well, I think, like, the more I look at it, prophecy's a program, and it goes to the whole free will thing, because prophecy is going on certainties, right? Especially if they come to fulfillment, then it's a certainty. So it's telling you a finite program. And like, I don't know if you've watched like those decodes on the first seal of the apocalypse with like the white horse, but it is undeniable that was like the whole COVID era. It's absolutely undeniable. So if that book was really written near 2,000 years ago, and it could describe to such a degree what happened in the last 4 years, now is that prophecy, or was that intentionally made to happen through prophecy, right? So
yeah.
But it's cyclic. That's why I don't think anything. I don't think anything's new, and I think there's like stuff that is awakened to us when we see like these global events, because I feel like we've all repeated these past cycles before. It's so ridiculously familiar, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I'd add to that, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, based off like tribal law is also psychology. So law is psychology, it's the psyche, it's consciousness, it's the archetypes, and it's what we've got within us. So I kind of always see it as, like, when you talk about like the blueprint and prophecy, it's essentially within us that we're playing out, if that makes sense. And so that's when that free will element comes in, because it's kind of like, this is our makeup, and it's kind of like we're playing out, almost, maybe there's probably to some extent the collective is unconsciously playing out this same expression again and again and again. And then it's when we become aware of it ourselves and make that free will choice that we change it. That's how I see it, like, because that's that's what I've kind of come to, is like, what's in the Bible, we can bring it back to ourselves, like when we kind of deconstruct it in different ways. So it really, I know it's, we always say this, but it really does come back to the individual all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I mean, look, and the thing is as well, back to like trying to decipher through different teachings, albeit like spiritual or dream time or whatever it may be, or just some individual that has a different take on it. Have you guys ever heard of Neville Goddard?
Yeah. Yeah.
Neville Goddard's got some really good work about deciphering the Bible. He speaks of the Bible a lot, but he also speaks into the consciousness and projecting yourself into the level that you want to be in the world or become. And he's sort of, it has a element of law of attraction, but it also is written and worded in the 40s and 50s. So it's like it's got a fair bit of age about it. And I'm surprised he wasn't killed, to be honest, because he talks about the Bible in terms of the meanings of words and deciphering codes and all the rest of it. It's really, really fascinating to go into, and even just from a mindset perspective and a shift in terms of just how you view the world. Then there's a guy that's he's from the States. He moved to Wollongong, and I think now he's moved again up into the coast somewhere, up the coast. But he has out of body experiences. His name's Darius J. Wright. Have you ever heard of Darius J. Wright?
Yeah, I've met him.
You met him?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a good chat with him a couple of weeks back, and I mean, this guy has out of body experiences, but travels into different dimensions of time. And so he's been to the 12 or 13 realms. And he talks about going to the heavenly realm. He talks about going to like as an expression of the soul, going through all of these like not, we call them Akashic records. He calls them something else. There's some sort of records that he decodes, and he gets through it all. Like he when you talk to someone like that, he just basically blows your mind again, and blows a lot of this sort of new age talk out of the water. And as a matter of fact, when you think about even ancient mythology has more truth to it than myth, I suppose. Like it kind of has a code within the code that is a fascinating sort of approach.
Well, that's why I think that the Greek stuff, especially Greek mythology, is so interesting, because like if you look at the New Testament's all Greek too. But can I read this prophecy? This one. I don't know if you've heard this one. So have you heard like the first 10 names of the Bible?
Yeah, go on.
Have you heard the prophecy though?
No.
So they've got the names, and then they have the like the translation of what the names were. So like Adam means man, then it's Seth is appointed, Enoch is mortal, Cain is sorrow, blah blah blah. Keep going. Enoch, Methuselah, Noah, and it ends in Noah. So all the names translated mean man appointed, mortal sorrow, the blessed God shall come down, teaching his death shall bring the despairing comfort or rest. So it's like, and Christians will like that. They'll say that this is the prophecy within the names that predicts the Messiah, and that God will come in the form of Jesus, right, and die.
Mm-hmm.
So. And again, this is like, you'll see, like the literalists will go, see that's evidence, and this is everywhere in the universe. So if you're looking for something, you'll find evidence of it, right? To reconfirm your belief system. But for me, what that tells me is, and I'm not doubting when these books were written or whatever, but for me, it shows you that coded blueprint is everywhere. It's everywhere.
Sure.
That doesn't even need to be. They'll say that's the evidence of God, and then you could say, well, the man that wrote the book deliberately encoded that in, and like they may both be true. But for me, it doesn't need to be either. It just shows you that the evidence of that blueprint, and especially like the Jesus story, it's resembled everywhere. You'll see it, like it's even in your own life. It's in the story of the sun going down and coming up every morning. It's in nature. Do you know what I mean? It's everywhere. So
yeah. Well, that's more to what Madeleine was saying before. You're talking to states of consciousness, and they're basically, because humans have this in they need to find out the meaning of something, and when it has no literal meaning, they create one. Like does that make sense? Like you need to give it some sort of meaning. So whether it be something to do with astrology, or whether the workings of the world, gravity, like we can't figure it out fully, but in the absence of having no answer, we're going to give it an answer. And then if we have to create a fable or a parable around what that can mean, and this is like, sounds like Dreamtime stories as well, doesn't it, Matt? Like you have to give it meaning in order to give it context and form. So I think that just as a human nature, we have this sort of incessant want to get a meaning and purpose and kind of definitive answer. And without that, we just make something up that's like conducive to the nearest thing that is closest to what the answer is.
We're natural storytellers, though, aren't we? That's our way of communicating.
Oh, 100%. which is why the Bible's so compelling, because it's a great story. Like, and there's so many of them and so many versions and from different points of view and angles. It's like, if you were to put it into a movie, like, it would be, you know, it'd trump the Lord of the Rings. Like, probably like a 12-part series.
Yeah.
For 3 hours at a time.
Yeah.
But can I ask you both, Madeleine, if you want to chime in with all this being said, in terms of the integration of AI, you can see like the world is at a precipice. It seems, in my lifetime especially, that everything's coming to a crescendo and there's an explosion of information that's coming through. Dale, you mentioned a couple of years ago the quickening, you know, things that are just happening at such a rapid rate. But I think it's even speeding up even further, which people finding it very difficult to decipher what direction they need to go. And then the question that I have for you both is, like, how do you know that and the information that you've come to learn, and then how do you derive meaning and purpose and belonging and a mission in life, like why you're here and what are you meant to do, all of those things. How do you define that for yourself in terms of navigating your, you know, young lives through the rest of your time here on earth?
You go, Mads. We were having that combo the other day.
Were we?
Well, I said yesterday, you go, I know you're not, I know you reckon you're not coming back, but I am. But
Oh.
anyway.
Yeah. Gosh, big question. I think for
Do you
me,
think, Madeleine, sorry to interrupt, do you think you're in control of your destiny? And then answer the rest of the question.
yes, I do think we have free will. Yes. And, you know, interesting story, right? Because I was bringing it back to when we went to the Living Free Festival. I was saying to Dale, like, I'm picturing me coming in late. What was I saying to you, Dale? Was I saying I can picture me, you already started, and I'm like rocking up. So I was saying that to him, right? I don't know, like months in advance. And then when I left, because I picked up my friend on the way, we had 2 hours spare. So we essentially we're supposed to arrive 2 hours prior to the event. And on the way, we're having all these conversations. We have pretty big conversations, me and her. We talk about a lot of different things. And it was really interesting because we were kind of like, oh, what's your intention for this weekend? Like, what do you want? You know, we're kind of like talking about intention, setting intention for the weekend. And just as we did that, we had to do this detour. So we ended up going off the highway and we ended up going on literally this back road and through this town. And anyway, I'm going, oh gosh, like we've just somehow added an hour. Like, we're looking at the GPS and I'm like, this is not good. Like, it's getting close. And then she put her phone up and it was this weird moment where we had my phone and her phone. Her phone, we were going to arrive right before the event, and mine, we're like 100% late. Anyway, we're like, what should we do? I'm like, I don't know. Should we go left or right at this thing? And I'm like, we'll go left. We'll follow the truck. Let's follow the truck. And I remember just saying, follow the truck. We're following the truck and we get up to this truck and we realize on the top of it, it says Fate Services. And it was like the weirdest thing because I was like, this is fated. And then we were following this truck. We've got these two different times that we're arriving on the phones. And then we kept talking. And anyway, I think I ended up saying, look, my intention is just have a really bloody good time and have a lot of laughter and, you know, just get silly, you know, or something like that. And, you know, she said her intention. Then she goes, and just as we did that, she looked at her phone. She goes, nah, I haven't got the address in. That's why yours is blah, blah, blah. So we were 100% running late, following Fate Services. And we've ended up arriving late, which ended up being quite hilarious, really, because Dale, like, totally like
I ripped her on stage for 15 minutes.
Ripped me for like 15 minutes, which was apparently hilarious. And then he's gone on to talk about some story about his, what was it, Darlene Love, escapades when he pretended to be a woman. And anyway, people were hysterical by the time I got up there. And it ended up being a really funny, funny time. The reason why I'm sharing that is because I reckon the free will element is like, I've actually set that up by choice in the past But in that moment, I still had the choice. There was almost like there's a choice to change it too. It's kind of like when we look at fate and free will, because I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm pretty sure the second Matrix, which I watched the other day, is all about fate and free will.
Mm-hmm.
And I see fate as something that we've set back in time with decisions and ways of being. And, you know, you can look beyond that. You can look lifetimes ago, up the genetic line, whatever, that's playing out. And then our free will is to continue on that path. But I think it's still free will because we've set it back up in time. Anyway, so that's to kind of speak into that, because I think that's a major thing that people, you know, we grapple with at the moment. But when it comes to all this, like, you know, I guess information, learning, for me, it always comes back to relationships, how I relate to myself and how I relate to other people and how I relate to the earth. I think that when it comes to how I practically apply what I'm learning, what I'm doing, what I'm coming across, it's like, how am I relating to the other? How am I relating to myself? And that's like the biggest thing that I draw meaning from, that becomes my purpose. Like, it really is a big part of, like, I feel like the journey that we're on, because we're essentially learning through relationships. Even if people are living alone or living, you know, they're still relating to their environment, or they're relating to, you know, themselves, or, you know, nature, or whatever it might be. And how we relate to that, I feel, is what, you know, the outcome that we kind of see in the future, whether it's with, you know, within families or within our environment. Like, that's what I kind of, that's like and that's what I see as the thing, is when we don't learn the lesson, or we bring things through time, a lot of the time it's how we've related to the other, or how we've related to something. And if that's out of balance, it's kind of like that circle can't be closed. So it continues cycling until it's closed again, you know, later on in this life, or yeah.
Yeah. Or possibly the
Long
next.
story short.
Yeah. So to what end though? Like, what's, with respect to what's happening in the world at the moment, there's a lot of things that could go horribly wrong. So in the midst of all of that, because what you're saying is that you're almost co-creating an event, right? So it's like, do you remember, are you guys old enough to remember the books Choose Your Own Adventure? You
Yeah.
I remember.
remember those? So like, you what you're saying is the sense that you've got an option A and an option B, and within that limited amount of free will, you have made a decision which has altered the story. So to what end? Like, do you have a definitive meaning and purpose that you've given your own life in the midst of everything else? Because now you're a small speck of a subatomic particle that is operating in this massive universe. Like, to what degree do you have influence over your life and the meaning that it gives?
You want me to answer?
Yeah, you answered that one. It's still
I,
relation.
I think is like even just the mindset of thinking yourself as little me, and again, like going to the hologram again, because if you are part of the hologram and you're in the smaller version of the hologram, you exist on all levels of the hologram. So immediately from that vantage point, that you're not little me, and every action does have importance. But I think that it's like, again, I think what you said, Mads, is like there's, yeah, you got free will and you don't, and it's the challenge is determining, like, through your own psyche, like what is my actual thoughts and behavior, and what do I actually want, and what isn't, right? What are all these other collective things? And I've kind of struggled with that in probably the last 6 months more than ever, that because I had this real, almost like martyrdom level of, like, you know, I want to change things and I want to change the collective. And I'm like, I pulled away from that. And then I'm like, well, is there, like, do I have a responsibility to the collective? Do I have a, like, responsibility to future generations? And it's easy for me to say that because I haven't got kids yet. But, or am I just an individual passing through? Right. And then, I don't know, it's a tough one.
I think it comes back
I'm still
to Hermetic.
balancing with that.
Well, Hermetic principles is you don't ever try and convince anyone of it. You know, you're not forcing anything on anyone. Everyone has their own, you know, individual path. but you're giving them the option or the showing possibility for people to choose. I mean, we can never
But
shape
you know right and wrong, right? But I can't. I'm not responsible for someone else's wrong behavior. I can call it out, but
but
ultimately,
it's like, yeah, when they talk about like just killing the people in power. Like for me, I'm like, that's not a solution, because the next people that are stemming from this imbalance and kind of that space of immorality is going to rise, because it's kind of like that is a manifestation of what of the space, like the situation that we're in, so like kind of getting rid of certain people, it's like they would just be replaced. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you become the tyranny that you're were trying to fight against.
Yeah.
So it's just like you become what you attract, or what you're trying to repel in that sense. So yeah, I get all that, and I think that if you look through the eons of time and all the stories, I mean, there is good and evil, and that's why I mentioned, like, at the outset of all things, there's a balance between, or duality between good and bad and right and wrong, and discerning between the two and embracing that. Perhaps they're always going to be a part of, the two sides of the same coin. So I understand where you're coming from. I guess the reason why I'm really probing this a little bit further is because you do get to the point where you have this mind-changing, life-altering moment or series of moments which cause you to think about the world in different ways. However, if you, in a practical sense, you're still living in a world where you have to function in society by working and earning money and providing, and you need a roof over your head and running water and basic foods and needs and all those sorts of things. And that's kind of how this world is made up. And that's kind of the wrestle that I've had over the last couple of years, or probably like 5 to 10 years, I would say, is the goal is to transcend to a level that you are enlightened. Okay, if we take a spiritual sense. However, in that moment, you're still operating in a world. So it's like this whole 5D consciousness rubbish that people fucking go on about. Like, what are you going to do? Morph into light? Like, and then what happens? It's just, there's no, in my mind, maybe it's just me being a fucking idiot, I don't know, but like, there's no reality in that I can conceive of. However, there is a state of consciousness, and within this meat suit and this 3D construct that everyone goes on about, the matrix or whatever, I'm still operating in this construct. So is there now a splice in time that by me elevating my level of consciousness and we're all doing the same, that we then meet in a level of humanity in the world that is conducive to the life and lifestyle and values and principles and ethics and morality and all that kind of stuff that we want to live? And then you will have these lower, echelons of society that are not living in that world. There is the AI, there is the cyborgs of our generations, and the transhumanism and all of that kind of stuff. Are we going to be living side by side eventually?
I think that at first, like, that it's such a massive program to, like, the whole ascension thing too, and it's all about, we've spoke about this before too. It's like it's diminishing yourself and the whole human experience, and like even the name Sky to Earth, it's about like the unseen and the seen. There's no more emphasis on one than the other, right? And I think there's like a massive agenda to like diminish like our existence in this time, and particularly this place, and which goes back to the Earth itself. So I can't. What was the question again?
I don't know.
No, I totally know what you're saying.
Life.
Like, I don't know what the question is. No, I totally get it. And first of all, like, there is definitely, like, we talk about this negation of the earth. Like, it's like you can see in all of these different agendas in the new age, in this kind of like, we're going to transcend the 5D realm. Even like, there's a lot of stuff woven through, Gnosticism and Gnostic ways of viewing things as well, where it is a negation of the earth, that this is a prison, that this is a simulation, that this is this, and this is that. And it's like trying to get away from that. And I think if you look at that again psychologically, you could actually bring that back to the relationship with their mother, and the relationship with themselves and their relationship with their body, and wanting to escape and wanting to, you know, break free from what they actually are feeling within themselves. I mean, like there's ways to kind of break that down. I'm not saying that there isn't truth behind it, but I just think that there's ways of looking at it. And I think a lot of the time we can see this, this kind of like line of, disconnecting people from the earth or negating it in some way. So there's that side of things. But I totally know what you're saying with, like, you know, we are still living, because I've been through, again, it's the pendulum swing, right? I've been through that phase where, you know, I was like, right, like I've just got to go live in the bush and disconnect and live the way that I, you know, think is the most aligned to nature. Realistically, though, first of all, that's not possible because a lot of the areas are actually, you know, closed off national parks or crown land, or, you know, there's a lot of these different things, and you need community. You literally need a community to survive. You need access to food. A lot of the bush tuckers being completely wiped. So that's not even realistic. But I guess
Adrian, you said that's hard work. You're like, I'm not fucking doing all that by myself.
Oh, shit. Have you ever tried to grow vegetables? Fucked. It takes so long.
But, you know, so, I mean, even people that are, you know, becoming sovereign on their own land, it's not possible. You got to buy chicken food. You got to get the soil. Like, it's ridiculous that people even think that they can become sovereign on this little. Yeah, it's complete. It's ridiculous, really.
But you got to be realistic. Like when you talk, because you're basically talking about like, you know, is there a level of consciousness where there's a reality split and we all fucking sing Kumbaya for it? But it's like, I mean, the dismantling of what this, of like, I get, you know, like the system that's in place now is like, that's no easy feat. I hear people all the time going, oh, they're going, I'm getting out of the system. I'm not paying taxes. I'm like, how are you going to fill up fuel? I'm like, you're automatically paying $1 a litre tax on the fuel. Like, there's no way, there's no way you can get around it. But like, yeah, you say, oh, sorry, you finish your story, man.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, well, something you just said there, like that's something that I hear a lot is like, you know, when people are going down that space of, you know, understanding law and trying to escape, you know, get out of tax and things like that. You know, you always hear people are in the process. They've never actually got to that point that they're wanting to get to. It's like, we're in the process, we're looking at these things, we're learning these things, but no one's actually really got there. I mean, one of the things that we can't get out of actually is tax. Clint Richardson, who we had on, who deconstructs the Bible and understands it from a space of law, he actually has he's been on that journey for a long, long time. And he was like, you cannot get out of it. And that's the main reason why a lot of people try to do it. You know, they end up going to jail because we have I
think it's a consciousness thing too, why there's even tax in place. Because we mentioned this before. It's like the very start of the Bible is like you're born of sin. So the moment you're born of sin, that's
that's right.
That's where the whole tax system comes from, because you're basically saying you're in debt.
Yeah.
And like I've tried to point that out so many times. People, I'm like, well, if you don't want to pay taxes, then you need to get rid of that original belief system that you are a born sinner. Because how can you be against tax if you're born of sin? It's the exact same thing. Because that's what the tax system survives. It's like you need to pay to be alive because you're a sinner.
Yeah, so this is why I wrestle with things like this, because when I've interviewed like politicians and stuff like that, I'll say, so what's the solution, Malcolm? You know, what's the solution, Gerard, and all the rest of it, you know, to the corrupt politicians that we have?
What do they say?
Like, you know, you just got to get and vote, mate. Like everyone's got. I'm like, well, isn't that part of the fucking problem? Like so wherever you go down that road, there is you met with a roadblock. So it's almost like the system needs to be recreated, maybe not fully discarded in that sense. I said the same thing to Tom Barnett, where I was like, let's just stop paying taxes, interest rates, utilities, and we'll just cripple the fucking country to the point where they have to bend to our ways. But he was like, yeah, okay, do that. And then you've got absolute fucking chaos and anarchy on your hands, and all of a sudden you may not be paying your utilities, but you're fighting the zombie apocalypse because you've now the the pendulum swung too far, right? This whole running to the hills and getting to the farm. If everything shits itself, I'm living on my sovereign land. Mate, I've got so much bush behind me. I could run in there, but I guarantee you, within a couple of days, I'm going to be running back to the fucking shops because, like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to nurture my 3 kids in the bush. Like, it's got fucking, now I need hammer and nails. I need swords. Like I need a shed. It's just like even the most basic things. It's ridiculous and redundant when you go to think about
they're not
the
in the
solutions
flow
of
of
it.
life. Those people, the extreme preppers too. Like I remember watching a Louis Theroux one from 30 years ago, and they were doing a daily bug out check to see if the UN had come in, and like their entire life is completely out of fear, waiting for this coming event. Like again, like a certainty of that thing. But I think it's just it's so corny and stupid, but it really it's almost like what we're doing now, what we've been doing, Scott. If it's like
Solution.
understanding yourself through this information. It's a long process. I think we're in the solution.
Yeah, I
I,
totally
and
agree.
I can't provide anyone with any solutions because I don't have one myself. So
Yeah.
it's like
We
we're
actually,
trying to figure it out.
yeah,
We're trying to
we
work it
actually,
out through talking. But
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, this is almost like a fucking tribal fire in a sense, a new
yeah,
age gathering of
yeah,
elders.
corroborate.
A corroboree, that's the word I'm looking for. We're sitting here as not so elderly elders, but trying to corroborate stories to see whether we're on the right fucking track or not. But I think to the point is everything, I think, by design is to take you away from yourself. And and when you cause such of a imbalance in your own true north, then you have no option but to gravitate towards something, someone, or whatever in order to get meaning and purpose and direction, because you have no ability in your own way to discern what is true for you, which is why you've got this Christian movement, which is why you've got these people separating from who's a shill and who's a white hat and a black hat. And then you've got these people running to the hills. Like, everyone's kind of just
Yeah,
not really deciding within themselves like what is true for them. They're running towards an ideology or some sort of leader, which is that kind of savior complex that I think people almost like David Whitehead said the same thing with in terms of religion. He's like, I think it's like a trauma response. People grew up with the whole religion, and you're born in sin, and now they're like, Jesus is the way, and if I just put my trust in Him, now I've got a guiding light to go towards. So all of a sudden, they've abdicated all their responsibility to the degree that someone's going to fucking return and save me, and it's all going to be good.
yeah. There was a lot of women actually that, well, there was men and women, but I was following a lot of women that were very vocal around, the time of COVID and the rollout of the jabs and all of that kind of stuff. And they were really, they were really putting out a lot of information. There was a lot of, kind of, you know, focus on them. And then you could kind of see this point where it was like, okay, what's the next step? And you could kind of see when they've positioned themselves in that way that there was a lot of eyes on them as to what they were going to do in terms of a solution. And that's when you started to see them swing to religion, which was
Mm.
so interesting to, because it was kind of like they got to a certain level where it's like, I don't actually know what to do now. And now I've got this option of certainty that if I pray every day, I can continue living my life. And, now I've got quite comfortable and made a lot of money because, everyone's come to me and I've helped them and sold oils and services and whatever.
Mm.
And I want to keep living like this. So it was really interesting to watch, because I was like, I wonder what has gone on for them in terms of like internally, because putting yourself out there in such a way, having such a huge following, a lot of people looking at you, when a lot of people are quite fearful and scared and looking for that savior, it's kind of like, I wonder if that was even like a, you know, a trigger as well, not just what was happening, you know, internally for them, but even that external kind of pressure as well to
Yeah.
kind of justify, you know. Yeah, it's fascinating. But like Dale and I always
David
like,
Whitehead calls it a regression, doesn't it? It's like
yeah.
the fear-based regression to go back to what you once knew, particularly those that grew up in that. Yeah, sorry, what were you going to say?
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
it. Yeah. But yeah,
Mm.
Dale and I often am like, okay, so how can we practically apply this? Like, I'm quite like, you know, so, you know, what do we do? And we, you know, we sometimes go back and forth with that, but not as much lately because I've really come to this place where it's like knowledge and these conversations and giving you know, giving people the awareness that there is a different way of looking at things, or there is this middle road or whatever is the solution. Like it's like knowledge is the solution actually. And it seems really, you know, like kind of flimsy, but
Mm.
it's quite solid really when you actually hand that responsibility back to the person. It's like,
Yeah, I do, but I think the knowledge and the application of the knowledge is
yeah,
like really the glue that holds everything together. And I understand, like with people that have chosen a certain position and they've got a particular, like you said, oil and products and programs and all that kind of stuff. But I have to be careful because, you know, I have products and programs and I teach people my ways of life and philosophies and help them to the degree that I think is my truth. And so this is where it starts to come full circle again, because you talk to, like a really good example is if you talk to a lot of murderers, they believe that they were doing the right thing at the time. You know, like it's, even though it's a heinous crime, but they feel like they were doing a good thing. You know,
mm,
so it does come back to that sort of discernment of self and understanding of self, and I guess if you replace God, Jesus, and prayer to just your inner, like that's you. You know, I always get heaps of pushback when I go like the God is within, like that's that conduit of energy, source, vibration. Like it's your own voice that comes back, and you know, people don't like when I talk to the fact that there's a God within, and your Christ, your level of consciousness is the Christ God consciousness that you're trying to emanate within the world. But I think probably in summary, like it sounds like that this type of corroboree that's happening more and more around the world now through podcasts and through events and through, you know, things that are happening, people are coming together as a community and as a collective, and I see it as a real next force in terms of having the discernment to come to, say, like a Sky to Earth conference, or you know, some sort of a program that you guys are running, but then taking all of that and applying the bits that apply to my life into reality again. And then I guess that whole evolution of contributing back to society is a way that we can kind of move through the separation and the division, which is, you know, like an age old methodology of those people who want to rule and control over everyone.
Yeah, do you know, with the trooper kind of communities too, it's like that going back to the earlier thing you spoke about is a lot of that infighting is people not agreeing on 90% of things, but then they're having fundamental differences on the 10%, and then to say like I can't be your friend or we're not. Um, and it should be that mutual respect of people coming together with fundamental disagreements on things. And like me and Madeline said, like when we went to Living Free movement, like there's speakers there that were fantastic, but I don't agree on certain things they talk about. And I had conversations with them, and they're great people.
Mm.
And what does it matter? It's not even like if I'm at a pub, it's not something that I would even bring up with a person. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like waiting to nitpick these little things. So I think a lot of people need to get away from that whole. I think there's a massive trap that, you know, like finding my people. It's like, well, who the fuck are your people, right? What's someone that thinks exactly the way you do? Sometimes complete opposites are good people. Like I just found out me and Madeline we're opposing Chinese astrology signs. You're not supposed to do. I found out yesterday. She's like, I go, I'm an ox, and I'm like, oh fuck, you're not supposed to do anything with me. But it's
Oh, really?
actually,
How do you know
it
you're an
actually,
ox? Just by the way you look?
I'm a goat. No.
I'm an ox slash Taurus. So I'm like a double stubborn. You can't make me do anything. Like you can't
Yeah.
make me budge.
Because
Uh,
what your birthday is it the 15th of May or
yeah, well done. Yeah,
yeah,
because what are you? You're day
3rd of
before
May.
3rd of May. Yeah, I knew you just before me. So
Yeah.
you're Taurus too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But like to my
I
point,
don't know what Chinese sign I am though.
oh, that's
Probably a
rough.
bull or a horse or some
Um,
ugly big animal.
I'll quickly look it up now. What were you, Matt?
A goat.
What's your birthday, Adrian?
The year 78.
Yeah, just my point I was making, like with me and Madeline, we kind of because everything we kind of usually talk about is like balance and being able to see other people's perspectives and I get and like us like doing stuff together. It almost is that to a degree. Like you're the woman, I'm a man. No, but we do have
But
a lot.
we
We do have a
complement
lot of
each other with questions, like the
yeah.
questions that we ask, and the interest is very different when we have guests on, like where we're coming from. Not very different, but there is yeah.
My
Which
perspective is that the common thread between you both is a curiosity and willingness to go underneath things and kind of get to the bottom of stuff. And the more that you figure out, the more you want to share how you're figuring out the process and help people come along for the ride. I think that's probably the tone of how I see things. When I spoke to before about contribution, I feel like that's at a level, and whether you find your feet or not, like, I think deriving an income and out of your meaning and purpose and passion is quite a mean feat some of the times. Sometimes you just feel like you're passionate about a certain thing, but to make a full-time living out of it, it skews the how you project things or how you carry yourself, because all of a sudden you've got a dollar amount to your information and knowledge.
Yeah.
It'd be nice that if we all just set up with as much income and basic needs or whatever as we need, and then we could just share our knowledge freely like it was once upon a time.
Yeah.
I think we do still share it freely, like podcasts are free, right?
Yeah,
But
100%.
because I've been doing my own thing for a long time, like even before we started doing Sky to Earth stuff. I always see it as like if people want to be a part of it, or if what you're sharing is of value, like you'll receive that value back. Like I always find that really beautiful, because it's like, well, what are people needing right now, and like what is of value? And I guess the monetary return for that shows you whether it's of value or not. And if you don't get it, then it's like, well, it's obviously not of value in this space, so
Sure.
I'm not offering it. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's a direct feedback for you. And then I think that's a beautiful thing. That's how you like engage with the ecosystem. What have I got, that I can share that people actually really need right now, yeah, because I'm the same. Like I
I was
share
going to say,
products,
do you know we
things like that, and yeah, there's an ebb and flow, like what people need.
Agreed.
I was just going to say how we like modeled the Scott Earth is so all the speakers that come on we pay as well. So the people that are paying for the conference are actually paying for the contribution of these. Some of the people that have been doing this stuff for 30 odd years or more, right? So it's not even just it's a payment for that contribution. But then I mean we get so much out of the attendees that come in. Like we do like group chats, and like some of the knowledge of that quiet person that just sits in the back right there. And you're like, I'm embarrassed that I've even been hosting this thing while this person's been sitting in the back. Like, do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but those people are everywhere, and like that's the stuff that I love. And it's it was beautiful the whole thing we did. But Adrian, you're a horse. I need to.
You're
I
a
knew it.
horse.
Oh,
Love that.
Maddie will like you. You're a horse, and a horse is optimistic. Tell me if this is you. Optimistic, kind-hearted. This is just the Google version.
Yeah.
Responsible, righteous. I think I can see that as you. High spirited, active, energetic. Their enthusiasm and cheerful personalities make them like people. That is why people who are born in this year of the horse will be the center of attention and make everyone around them enjoy their company.
Oh, mate.
You sound like a good
Spot
bloke.
on. Couldn't get any more accurate than that.
No, I think that's probably pretty close to you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, horses and oxes and goats get along, don't they?
What's goat and horse? Because I have two horses, so
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not supposed to own a cow, apparently. Is that right? Or eat cow?
I don't know. I just follow this one guy. I don't know.
I just follow this one guy.
I was talking to someone the other day and they go, oh, you shouldn't marry your enemy sign. And then they checked up their wives and their wife was their enemy. And they're like, I go, how's the marriage? And they're like, yeah, no, sweet. It's like, yeah. It's like, I don't think, yeah, you can't take
look, it's like with the do you ever read like your horoscopes or the attraction between one, like a Taurus and someone else? And they're like, Taurus and Capricorn, they're the best match and all the rest of it, and Taurus or whatever. But I mean, it's just like, to what degree do you follow all of that? Because I've in my personal life, like I've been with a Taurus and it hasn't worked out, and I've been with like my partner's an Aries, right? And so we're not meant to be that compatible, right? But we totally are, and like everything's like perfect, so like to what degree should I hold weight on the fact that I'm an Aries, she's an Aries, and I'm a Taurus, that sort of thing, or your life path and all the rest of it. Like I think my life path number's 6, and there's something else with my dates are like a 3-3. So my mate Scotty's the same. He's like, you got the Jesus number, you're a 33. Like, well, yeah.
You got 33-6. That's what Maddie is.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, well, I found that out last weekend or whenever it was.
Yeah, right. I was speaking to, have you ever heard of Gary Lineham from the Human Garage? Have you ever seen him on Instagram? He governs his whole fucking life on astrology. He goes, I don't make a decision without like consulting the numbers, I'm like, oh, he's pretty popular and successful. Maybe I'm missing something.
Oh, is that the guy? Oh, is it the same guy I'm thinking of? Yeah.
It's funny. You want to hear a funny story? I reached out to do an interview with him, and his team got back to me and set something up, but they thought I was setting up a Zoom meeting so I could like have a consultation.
Oh, right.
So we get on.
Give me $10,000 or whatever he charges.
Yes, exactly right. So anyway, we get on the Zoom call, and he's like, "Okay, whatever," and going on about a few things and whereabouts you're based and all this kind of jazz. And I'm like, "Okay, so look, the way that this runs." And he goes, "What do you mean the way that this runs?" So it was just like I was just telling him, okay, so I don't really have any questions. It's a free flowing conversation. He's like puzzled as to what the fuck is going on. He's like, hang on a second, are we doing a podcast or something? And I'm like, yeah, that's why we're here. And then all of a sudden, like, it was just fucking crazy, right? No. And I thought, oh, fucking hell, I had to get up super early because he's over in the States.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, what a waste of fucking time,
So you didn't do it?
No, I did do it. But he goes, what's your birthday? And I said, 3rd of the 5th, 78. He goes, oh, so you're this and whatever, you're blah, blah, blah. And basically rambled off all the shit that you just said. And then he talks to his missus and he goes, hey, can you get me the light and blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, okay, yeah, let's do it. He goes, we'll do it now. I've got 45 minutes, so let's rock and roll. Cool. And so we did the podcast, which is great. But if I was any other number, apparently, like he wouldn't have done it.
I haven't seen that.
Haven't you?
No, I'll have to. Yeah,
I should have left that part of the recording in because it's just it was so bamboozling at the beginning. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So
I can picture the confusion. But do you know what? It's you see people. I was having this conversation yesterday with someone because you get people that are extreme like that. You're like, to the numbers and everything. And I was talking to, that's what I was talking to someone yesterday about. They've organised an event, and the event happened to fall on a significant date. And then they checked the astrology, right? And it matched perfectly. And I said, that's so much better than like having to control your life by looking at that, I'm saying it's not necessarily bad to do that every now and then, but like if you're in the flow anyway, you're probably going to match the right times. And then it's almost like you're wanting to control free will.
Yeah.
You're better off in Madeleine's case where don't look at the astrology, and then when the event happens, then blame the astrology.
And figure it out. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, I saw 333 on the dashboard, and then at that time I went past 3rd Street, and then all of a sudden I thought, this is it. It's the 4 threes, which told me to think about my higher purpose and meaning, and I fucking didn't. So, that's why everything went wrong that day. Yeah. Crazy. All right, guys. It's been a mad chat. It's really great to have you both on. I actually don't mind the sort of triplet sort of interview thing. It's really good. So
we didn't interrupt too much. Did pretty well.
You guys did well. Really good. No drinking of milk, so that would have set things off if we had that going on. It would have had. And then Dale, I really appreciate the fact that you weren't like wandering around your home and then talking to your mum and or going to a different room in the house because your Wi-Fi is shit or something like that. This has actually been the most professional. Mads, did he tell you that I said with complete love and respect, don't fucking do this like
I forgot. Yeah, he actually
approach.
Yeah, he actually messaged me, and I'm like, "This is very, very assertive. With love and respect, can you please find a quiet place at a good microphone?" And I said, "With love and respect." What did I say? Okay.
Yeah, that's it. I'll leave a mic up for you. I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh, so funny.
It's been great. So yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You get so much shit about that because half the time you're like in Thailand or in your van or you're out here and you're moving this.
No, I'm glad you said that because
Well, it all worked out in the end. If people want to go find you guys and listen to your podcast and learn more about you guys and your work, where do they go?
Yeah, Sky to Earth podcast on Spotify. And then we also have the Instagram, and we'll probably do another Sky to Earth. I don't know. Should we do it during election time, Dale?
Actually, Adrian, I saw that you, just a quick one, I saw that you just shared that you got in the top 50 for education, so you've knocked us out.
No way. I thought you were like bit better than me. I thought you were in like the high 30s or something like that.
No, we got down to like 24, and then
we
haven't done any for 8. We just have, when you don't do many, you slip back out. So
yeah, right.
We need to get cracking. So what you look? I'm gonna have a competition with you now.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Education as well. This is fun. I love a bit of competition.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm trying to get as many podcasts. I used to think, if I could just do one a week, it'd be fine. But then you hit dry spots where you've got things happening or stuff gets moved and all that kind of stuff. And so now I just basically shoot it and launch it. I don't have. If I do 3 in a week, I don't give a fuck. I'll just do it. But it really is a challenge to sort of get as many guests as possible. And it's just one of those things where the more I'd like to find things that I'm interested in. That's probably why it's a little bit harder. I don't just want to interview anyone for the sake of having a guest to fill each week. I really like to learn about people, read their books and listen to their podcasts and things like that, and then sort of go down the path of like maybe inviting them. So every morning I'm kind of like sending an email to someone around the world, to kind of, come on the show. I'm trying to get RFK back on again, actually. So, so see if I can talk to him again, but that'd be just one of the things in the pipe works of getting all like as many interesting people. I think, I don't know if I told you, I started doing MMA about 18 months ago with my kids.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm now interested in fighting for the first time in a while. So I'm starting to gravitate towards people that are kind of like that. And I don't know if did you used to skate when you were younger, Dale? Do you just like skateboard or anything like that?
I was a rollerblader like Drazik.
Oh, really? Yeah. I had a rollerblading phase. What did you have? Did you have Roses or Roaches, whatever? Do you remember those?
Yeah, I don't think so. I can't remember.
I switched from skateboarding to the rollerblade in the 90s. So, but then I just went back. I couldn't handle it with the rollerblades. But anyway, do you know about like the Bones Brigade and Tony Hawk and Steve Caballero and all those guys? So I'm kind of reliving my youth because I used to own a skate park and all.
Yeah, get all those guys on.
So I'm just like, yeah, who the fuck cares? Like, just reach out to them. Like, what can they say? It's just like you know, they can just say no, and I just move on to the next person. But I'm thinking it'd be great to interview like Steve Caballero, you know, like the guy's like in his 50s, he's still skating. There's a couple of comedians and a few guys that I like. I'm just reaching out to them just to see, you know, if anything's going to come back. But anyway, yeah. All right. So we've got some healthy competition going on.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see how we go. We'll have to get you on too.
Oh yeah. Well, your numbers will definitely fucking skyrocket if I get up there. You'll probably go into the top 20.
Strategic move.
No,
there's that humble Adrian that's just coming across again. Guys, you guys are amazing. Thanks so much for the chat. I really appreciate you. And I'm sure we'll circle back again and have another chat soon.
Awesome.
Cheers. Thanks, mate.
All right, guys. Take care. Have a good day.
Bye.
You too.